The check was crisp, clean. The kind of clean that only comes when someone has practiced handing over silence before. I remember the exact weight of that envelope in my hands, the way my fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from something deeper, something I didn't have a name for yet. My name is Lila, and for 11 years I gave everything I had to a man named Daniel and his family's company. I wasn't just an employee, I was the heartbeat of that place, the one who stayed past midnight when the numbers didn't add up, the one who remembered every client's birthday, every partner's preference, every storm before it arrived. I built that company from a struggling regional firm into something people actually respected. And Daniel, my husband, he stood beside me through all of it. Or so I believed. We met in the early days of the business. He was the charming face, I was the quiet architect. We fell in love the way people do when they're working towards something together. Slowly, then completely. We got married in the spring. His mother wore blue. His sister cried. I thought I had finally found my people. But families have a way of showing you who they really are when money grows large enough to cast a shadow. It started with small things I dismissed, because love makes you generous with explanations. A meeting I wasn't invited to. A decision made without my name in the room. A whisper that stopped the moment I walked through a door. I told myself it was just growing pains. Companies change, people get busy. I was probably overthinking. But what I didn't know that day, the Tuesday in October when Daniel's mother called me into her office with that warm, practiced smile, was that they had already made their decision. Long before I sat down. Long before she folded her hands on that mahogany desk and told me I was no longer the right fit for the direction of the company. The direction of the company. As if I hadn't drawn that direction with my own hands. The envelope slid across the desk toward me. Inside was a check. Generous enough to feel like a compliment, and insulting enough to confirm exactly what I was to them. A problem with a price tag. She said it gently, the way people do when they want Creati to feel like kindness. We think this is best for everyone, Lila. For the business, for you and Let me take you back to where the cracks first became impossible to ignore. It was a Thursday evening, 4 months before that envelope ever touched my hands. I had come back to the office late. I had forgotten my laptop charger. Something so small, so ordinary. The building was mostly dark. The kind of quiet that feels like the office is exhaling after a long day. I heard voices from the boardroom. Daniel's voice, his sister Mara's voice, and a man I recognized as their new legal consultant. A man I had never been formally introduced to, despite the fact that I was still, on paper, co-director of operations. I stood in the hallway. I did not go in. Something instinctive held me still. What I heard shattered something inside me that I am still learning to name. They were discussing restructuring. Not the company's finances, but its ownership. My name was being removed from key documents. My equity stake, which Daniel and I had built together, was being quietly transferred into a holding structure that would render my shares symbolic, decorative, worth nothing in any real decision. And Daniel, my husband, the man who had kissed my forehead that same morning, said, "She won't fight it. You know how she is. She trusts too much. She trusts too much." I walked back to my car. I sat in the dark for a long time, and I made a choice in that silence. I would not cry. I would not confront. Not yet. Because the consequences didn't arrive with noise. They never do, not the real ones. They arrived on a Monday morning, 8 weeks later, in the form of a certified letter from my attorney to the company's board of directors. It outlined in precise legal language the unauthorized transfer of equity, The misrepresentation of ownership documents, the exclusion of a co-director from material decisions affecting her stake. It named Daniel. It named Mara. It named the legal consultant who had sat in that boardroom while I stood silent in the hallway. Within 48 hours, I received a call from the company's most significant investor, a man who had come into the partnership on my recommendation 3 years prior. He had questions. Many of them. By the end of that week, 2 of our largest clients had formally requested to renegotiate their contracts, contingent on clarity about leadership structure. My attorney had filed for arbitration, and the check they had handed me, the one meant to buy my silence, had been returned, uncashed, with a note attached. I don't need this. I never did. What happened next wasn't loud. There was no dramatic confrontation in a courtroom, no tearful breakdown from Daniel in a hallway. What happened was quieter, and in many ways more devastating than anything dramatic could have been. The company agreed to a settlement. My equity was restored. My contributions were formally documented and acknowledged. I walked away not only with what was mine, but with my dignity fully intact. Daniel called me once. His voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said. I thought about all the ways I could have answered that, all the pain I could have handed back to him in words. But I simply said, "I know. That was your mistake." And I hung up. I won't tell you I didn't grieve. I grieved deeply. Not just the marriage, but the version of myself who had loved so fully that she made herself invisible. That kind of grief is its own long season. But I moved through it. What I learned, what I carry with me now, on the other side of all of it, is something I want to leave with you. Your softness is not your weakness. Your trust is not your flaw. But never let anyone convince you that your silence is the same as your surrender. They handed me a check to vanish. What they accidentally handed me was the moment I finally decided to be seen. And I have never been more visible in my life.